By now, it's pretty self-evident that attractive people are simply treated better. Facial aesthetics has been found to correlate time and time again with what we know as the halo effect, where we subconsciously associate more positive qualities with people who are better looking. What does it mean to be better looking though? In the simplest form, it means that your facial features are in harmony with each other, and more importantly, they're average. Now, being average has never exactly been considered a good thing. I know if I brought home a C report card, I might as well not. But in terms of facial features, averageness is good in positively influencing how people perceive you. Having an average plain Jane face might not be attractive, but having a few average features like everyone else helps you blend in for all the right reasons and stand out for others. Before we can talk about the focus of this video, how people see and treat you by your jaw prognathism, well, first I need to explain what that actually is. Prognathism is the spatial relationship between your upper and lower jaw. For this experiment, they've used the 3 recognized skeletal classes from another study, and we commonly know these as overbites and underbites. There have been a few studies, a few of which I've linked in the description, that have concluded Class 1 is more attractive than Class 2, with Class 3 coming last, although this is still heavily debated in the community. More interestingly, attractiveness of facial features as rated by individuals with different levels of education, 2008, found obviously Class 1 again to be ideal, as it's the most average face, and slightly protruded and recessed chins to be only marginally less attractive. The most extreme cases of prognathism were deemed the least attractive. Similar trends were seen through multiple test groups, each of varying education levels, with university graduate scores being significantly lower than non-graduates, meaning that the university graduates were more picky when selecting for facial attractiveness. So I think it's fair to once again reaffirm that jaw averageness is good and is more or less universally desired in female participants in this case. I'd assume it's likely the same for males too. Nothing really surprising there, but it helps make our next and main research paper's findings more rigorous, as it's based on previously established fact. Facial aesthetics and the assignment of personality traits before and after orthodontic surgery 2018 tries to scientifically quantify how much the halo effect impacts improvements in certain features, in this case the jaw alignment. The test raters consisted of 83 females and 72 males, aged from 19 to 42, and each were asked to evaluate test subjects from the 3 prognathism classes mentioned previously, and an additional laterognathia class or jaw asymmetry group. General impressions upon seeing their face, like perceptions of beauty, successfulness, faithfulness, etc., were taken pre and post-op from the subject's orthodontic surgery, except for Class 1, who are the control and have had no surgery done. The questionnaire was divided into physical aesthetic impressions and personality impressions with the following results. Class 3 jaws, heavily protruded ones, benefited the most from the surgery, having the greatest change in pre- and post-op perceptions, especially in beauty, pleasantness, attractiveness, and health. In fact, they rated higher than any other class in all aspects of the questionnaire post-op, including the average control group, Class 1. Perhaps they were hiding an inner beauty that the protruded jaw heavily detracted from, or maybe surgeons are better at correcting this type of deformity than with other classes. The other 2 classes, Class 2 and laterognathia, also benefited from corrective surgery, but the mean differences were less pronounced, and as visually seen, the graph gradients are shallower. Lastly, the Class 1 control group, normally aligned jaws, went down in all aspects from their initial ratings. Again, I would guess that once everyone had their corrective surgery, the playing field was evened and the control group were rated more accurately against higher beauty standards. Now, in the personality section, things are less clear-cut. Faithfulness, good-natured, and gentle are qualifiers that showed little deviation pre- and post-op, which supports other research papers that suggest we determine those things more from the eye region and mid-face rather than the lower third and jaw. They didn't change their eye shapes, and so there's no reason for them to have more aggressive looking faces and vice versa. Interestingly, all classes except the control were deemed to be more confident after increasing in attractiveness. Here's where things got grey, because although we started this video talking about the halo effect and its correlation to facial attractiveness, only one of the 5 personality parameters actually showed any correlation. While I don't deny that the effect exists, this study only really looks at the jaw, and so to draw conclusions like improving just my jaw will make me better perceived in every aspect of my life, like the halo suggests, is a bit short-sighted. However, improving jaw alignment does improve sexual dimorphism in both men and women, which I think is what these participants are actually rating as confidence. You can't see physical confidence from a face, that's just ridiculous, but you can see factors that indicate higher testosterone and indicate genetic health in a face, which the average person may attribute as looking confident. Just Google confident guy and tell me what they all look like. Fixing your jaw has many benefits in how you're perceived, but the majority of modern humans have some level of malocclusion or jaw misalignment in their faces, so how do you know when it's worth fixing and when it's worth leaving? The final study that we're going to look at today, The Influence of Mandibular Prominence on Facial Attractiveness 2005, tries to answer just that with degrees of deviance. The study opens with a paper by Arpino et al. That found that patients have a preferred expectation of what they want to look like after surgery, and while the surgeon and patients both share similar views, the surgeon was more lenient to a few degrees of deviation from the patient's idealized view. In other words, the patients had a lower tolerance and expected perfection from their surgeons, when in reality that's just not possible. When degrees matter, as you'll find out, patients can be left dissatisfied with the final product. Which is why answering the question of when should I get a jaw fixed is so important, because it's really weighing pros against cons, fixing something that's not broken and ending up with the worst result. The method used here is very similar to others in this field of study. Produce a few images and vary them by a variable and then show them to participants to rate. The test varied images by the cella nasion to point B angle, which is the SNB, and it's a way of measuring as a function of jaw position in relation to the upper maxilla and midface, so it's a form of cephalometric analysis. As expected, the more the angle deviates away from the norm, the less attractive the face becomes. The results follow a bell curve, and the most attractive angle was actually the control angle, the Eastman normal value of 78 degrees. This value is taken from an average of test subjects in 1987 with almost perfectly aligned jaws. The study highlights that improving more extreme cases of skeletal discrepancy brings about the most gains aesthetically. Attractiveness dropped the most when going from 73 to 70.5 degrees for Class 2 and 83 to 85.5 in Class 3. If you are greater than these outer bounds, then it may be worth considering correction. 2/3 of participants would not seek treatment for profiles with a SNB of 73 to 83 degrees, and this is backed up by the data as well, as within these ranges, the aesthetic improvements are only minor. This range is actually different to what orthodontists typically consider acceptable, from 75 to 81 degrees. To sum this video up, there's a larger range of what we consider acceptable features. While the bounds for what's acceptable is larger than what orthodontists consider acceptable, the most attractive is still the most average value, which is why I keep harping on averageness being attractive in faces, as in scientifically quantified averageness like the Eastman value of 78. If your jaw is beyond the 73 to 83 degree SNB, then it may be worth consulting your orthodontist about it, because, as we've learned from the other papers, it influences how people judge you quite strongly. Alright, that brings another episode to a close. If you've enjoyed this type of rigorous scientific content, then please do subscribe and like to support the channel. For those of you that are out of the loop, we're working on a service on the coovs.com website where we analyze your face top down and measure features like the SNB angle for you from pictures that you send in, and then provide recommendations based on that, backed by scientific citations like the ones used in this video for accuracy. There'll be a few tiers, from a quick intuitive analysis of your face to a full-on detailed and researched report, but we're still a few weeks away from launch, as we're currently talking to scientists on how to incorporate their findings correctly into our own report. And lastly, the channel now has a Patreon. During research for a new video, we read through almost 20 research papers per video, especially for one like this, and it's a shame we can't fit all of it into a video. On Patreon, depending on your tier, you have the ability to send us photos to analyze on demand, or join our Discord to chat with us about something you're interested in. Plus, you get insights into research papers and get an extra say on what or who you want us to cover in our videos.